Have you ever heard the saying, your thoughts shape your words, words turn into actions, actions become habits, habits define your character, and your character shapes your destiny? Simply put, what you think can decide where you end up in life. It might sound deep, but it's a straightforward concept. Your thoughts influence how you live. By the time you realize this, it could be too late. This is the story I want to share today. I'm Rebecca, 54 years old, working part-time as a homemaker. Married for 30 years, our 2 kids are grown, and my husband and I enjoy our days together as a couple. Retirement is approaching. I mentioned this over dinner to my husband, who's 3 years older than me and will retire in 3 years. He's been a banker for about 35 years since college. In the past, it was common to use the retirement bonus to pay off the mortgage and plan for post-retirement life. Paying off the mortgage at once with a lump sum was the norm. But times have changed. Oh, really? My husband explained that only a handful of companies offer retirement bonuses in the hundreds of thousands, and getting tens of thousands is considered good. Besides, there's the challenge of needing $200,000 for retirement, and more households prefer keeping as much cash as possible. I was quite intrigued by my husband's banker-like perspective. Regarding our house, what if we pay off a chunk to save on interest? We can then manage the remaining loan with our reduced living expenses. Fortunately, I can work as a contract employee even after retiring. It's comforting to have a financially savvy husband. You're reliable. I complimented him while pouring a glass of wine. One day, some unexpected guests arrived at our house. "Hey, Rebecca, it's been a while," greeted my 6-year-old brother and his wife, Annabelle. I must have made a face upon seeing them. They weren't pleasant people, but I kept my thoughts to myself. "Why are you here in the middle of the day on a weekday?" I inquired. Annabelle promptly replied, "Well, we just built a new house, and we thought of getting a congratulatory gift." A congratulatory gift? It felt rather impolite to come seeking gifts, and I'm sure many would agree. However, these individuals considered it normal, posing a problem. Reflecting on it, they've been money-focused since their marriage. Back when they got married, I was still in college, and my brother shamelessly said, "You're over 20 now, so you're an adult. Give us a gift, whether you're earning or not. Going to college as a woman is a waste. Use that tuition money for our gift instead." Even my parents were astonished by my brother's greed. I thought no one could be more greedy than him, but it turned out Annabelle was equally miserly. They talk about money all the time, even during Christmas and New Year's. "Rebecca, how much do you make? What's your husband's bonus? What assets does your family have? How much is your father getting in pension?" Annabelle inquired. There's a recent popular web service that analyzes people's brains just by entering their names, and I can imagine if they used it, the word money would dominate. Dealing with such vulgar and uncivilized people is something I'd only endure when necessary, and yet, here they are, expecting a congratulatory gift for their new house. Wait, a new house? I learned that my brother retired at 60 this year. Annabelle seems to be working part-time, but, well, this might sound odd. But did you secure a proper loan for your new house? When I inquired, my brother responded, "Loan? Not at all. I bought this house with my retirement money and the inheritance from her parents." It turns out my brother used his $80,000 retirement funds, $140,000 in savings, and his sister-in-law's parents' $250,000 inheritance to purchase a house. I've been in a rental for a long time, and I wanted to experience living in a house. A new house is definitely nice. Indeed, it's really nice. Much cleaner than this old house. It's barrier-free, and will be secure in our old age. However, I'm concerned about such a risky move. But you still have 5 years until you start receiving your pension. Don't you think it would be better to have some savings for your old age? When I mentioned that, my sister-in-law shot me a contemptuous look. "You're such a worrywart. We've thought about those things." At that moment, my brother and his wife exchanged a creepy smile as they leaned in close to each other. What are they plotting? I discovered their scheme a month later. Rebecca, your dad collapsed. I got that call from my mother during my lunch break at work. My father was perfectly fine when I spoke to him a week ago. Why did this happen? I informed my workplace and immediately rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, my husband was already there, offering comfort to my haggard and slouched-shouldered mother. "How's Dad doing?" I inquired, prompting my husband to explain that instead of my mother, my father had collapsed in the bathroom and was rushed unconscious to the hospital. He had been diagnosed with a subarachnoid hemorrhage, undergoing immediate surgery and still undergoing treatment. I see. Did you inform my brothers? Yes, I did, but they mentioned discussing the inheritance before visiting his bedside. So, rather than coming to the hospital, they chose to consult with a lawyer at the law firm. How money-focused can those insensitive couples be? My father is still alive, albeit in critical condition, with a chance of the worst outcome, but it seems inhumane to prioritize sorting out finances while he's still fighting. I'm at a loss for words. Even my mother wears a resigned expression towards their behavior. Honestly, I'm appalled. What kind of heartless individuals are they? The surgery on my father was successful. However, his elderly condition remained precarious, and making predictions seemed impossible. While my mother and I took turns visiting, my brother and his wife were nowhere to be found. Then, a week after the surgery, we received a call from the hospital. "Your father's condition has suddenly changed." My husband, mother, and I rushed to the hospital, only to find my brother and his wife surprisingly already there. "You arrived early," I commented to my brother, who oddly wore a cheerful expression. "Well, why would he look so happy when our parent is in critical condition?" The reason became apparent quickly. "Hey, what about your father's life insurance? Can you ask your mother about it?" My sister-in-law whispered audibly in the hushed hospital room. I shot her a glare, but she appeared genuinely puzzled, saying, "What's wrong?" That foolish expression of hers only fueled my anger. Then the doctor entered the room to check on my father. I believe today is the turning point. The doctor informed us with a serious expression, and my husband, mother, and I broke down in tears. Memories of my father flashed through my mind in an instant. My mother was in the same state, holding my father's hand and calling out to him with a tearful voice. "Oh, but we finally get it. Yeah, now our retirement is secure." I overheard my brother and his wife conversing as we mourned. They seemed eagerly anticipating my father's passing. I recalled what they had said earlier. Their focus was on their retirement, connecting it to my father's inheritance, the new house they built by depleting their savings, the matters with the law firm, and this callous statement. My mother seemed to grasp their intentions and shot a sudden look at my brother and his wife. They had a hyena-like appearance, fixated on their prey and eagerly awaiting its demise. People often say that when anger peaks, it transforms into an unusual calmness, and that proved true. My mother appeared to share the same sentiments, and after silently observing my brother and his wife, she suggested, "Let's step outside for a moment." We exited the hospital room and settled into a discussion in the hospital's lounge. "You two really have no idea," my mother stated with a mix of disbelief and perhaps pity as she looked at them. "What do you mean?" My sister-in-law noticed the shift in my mother's demeanor, her expression suddenly stiffening. My brother maintained a relaxed look, but I wondered if it was only a matter of time. My mother continued, "There's no inheritance for you two to claim." "What? What do you mean, Mom?" My brother's expression abruptly tensed. "There's nothing to inherit. The house and land we live on are in my name, and your father has no assets." Come to think of it, I've heard this before. My father was the type who didn't hoard money. He had a habit of spending all he had, and my mother handled all the household finances. The only money my father possessed was for his daily cigarette expenses. Aside from a vague understanding of money, he was a good husband and father. So my mother and father managed quite well together. In reality, my father had no significant assets, and if anything, he only had a few dollars for his cigarette expenses in the coin purse he always carried. But he has life insurance, right? Yes, but I am the beneficiary. It's none of your concern. My mother sharply replied. Your father is still alive, and this couple is only thinking about money, bringing up life insurance. As I was about to voice my frustration, my mother intervened. Firstly, your father is not someone who would succumb to something like this. He stayed calm during a motorcycle accident, when caught in an avalanche while skiing, and even when he was ill. He has overcome cancer and liver cirrhosis with sheer willpower. If you're concerned about inheritance, shouldn't you be more focused on your own spouse than your stepfather? My mother chuckled while addressing my sister-in-law, and my brother was the one expressing his frustration. Mom, I'm still alive. Don't talk about inheritance. It's inappropriate. It's rude. Their annoyance was likely because they couldn't inherit anything. However, it's the same for you. You're saying the same thing to your father now. Do you realize that? You're being disrespectful and uncivilized. My mother's words left them speechless, forcing them to remain silent. And there was no inheritance to claim. They stood there stunned. What should we do? We built a house and bought a car because we expected an inheritance. How will we sustain ourselves from next month? Last month, we went on a shopping spree using credit, and we still have outstanding loans for the air conditioner and refrigerator we purchased when we moved. My husband and I observed these 60-year-olds panicking due to a lack of funds. I quietly suggested, firstly, it's wrong to rely on money that you're not even sure of receiving. You lack proper planning skills. The two of them seemed too drained to argue with me. Then my brother proposed, let's sell a house. It's the only solution. While it sounded like a sensible idea, my sister-in-law vehemently opposed it. No, that house is my sanctuary. I won't sell it. We've finally found a peaceful place to live, and I won't give it up because of this. Oh, if your father doesn't have an inheritance, why not consider sharing your mother's inheritance? Yes, let's do that. It's a good idea, my sister-in-law suggested, approaching my mother. I'm still alive. My mother's response was so comical that I nearly burst out laughing, but I had to hold it in. My brother looked at me. Help me out here. I could almost hear his plea in his expression. At that moment, my husband, a banker, chimed in. Why not consult a financial planner? If you have no income and no savings, you're in a hopeless situation. Selling the house seems appropriate. Fortunately, there's no mortgage, so selling it can bring in some cash for you to live on. Selling the house is the only way to escape this predicament. However, my sister-in-law remained adamant. We won't sell the house. Absolutely not. If that's your stance, then contribute to our living expenses. After all, you're siblings, right? This time, she redirected her attention to us, but my husband skillfully sidestepped the request. It's not feasible. I only invest in ventures with assured returns. My husband's words, shaped by years in the loan department, carried weight. Even if there were potential returns, I wouldn't invest in such a couple. Amidst our discussion, the doctor called. Finally, the moment had arrived. I was mentally prepared for it. When my mother returned from the hospital room, she informed us, "It might not be good news for you. Your father has regained consciousness." She said this while casting a cold stare at my brother and his wife. My husband and I felt a wave of relief at my mother's words, and tears welled in our eyes. My brother and his wife, having realized they would not inherit anything, seemed indifferent to my father's condition. Yet perhaps they were attempting to maintain the facade of concerned children. Dad, that's great. Yes, you're right. They uttered these insincere words. As my husband and I entered the hospital room after my mother, my brother and his wife trailed behind with seemingly innocent faces. Just before they could enter, my mother halted them. You two are excused. Your obsession with money sickens me. If you have the time to visit, contemplate your life from tomorrow onwards. She dismissed them like stray dogs and concluded with this remark. I'll leave you with this message. Thoughts become words. Words become actions. Actions become habits. Habits become character. And character becomes destiny. My brother and his wife were left stunned by my mother's unexpected speech. Huh? In essence, your thoughts ultimately shape your destiny. Unless you alter your thinking, your destiny remains unchanged. Reflect on this carefully. Consider how foolish, unsightly, and pitiable your actions are. With that, my mother firmly shut the door to the hospital room, signaling her determination to break ties with her son. Following that, my brother and his wife were compelled to sell their house. They had to part with their recently constructed home and land for less than a quarter of the $400,000 they initially paid, just 6 months after putting it on the market. This was due to the discovery that the ground in the area was quite unstable, causing land prices to plummet. Moreover, the surplus of houses for sale in the vicinity led to buyers offering very low prices. Despite their reluctance, they had no choice but to sell the house. The unemployed couple now has only a meager amount of cash to sustain them in their old age. It's likely that the funds will deplete before they begin receiving their pension in 5 years. My brother resorts to working as a day laborer for daily wages, while my sister-in-law takes on part-time work. It's a lamentable tale of individuals self-destructing by relying on their parents' inheritance. I hope they grasp the gravity of my mother's words. Surprisingly, there are many stories like this. When people become fixated on money, their judgment often falters. A previous customer of mine once remarked, "When my parents pass away, I'll use the inheritance to pay off my mortgage. So please arrange it for a 20-year term." Such cases are not uncommon. It appears that such situations are prevalent in the world. It's indeed a significant issue. Bankers, dealing with a diverse range of individuals, undoubtedly have a challenging job. There are countless untold stories due to confidentiality. Perhaps I should let my husband take over as the next storyteller. He might have even more fascinating tales to share. Just kidding. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until the next video.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, We had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully." Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.